I was thinking of it from, the other
Have you
side.
got any results from the actual course they did that show that in this year of study using this technique, the results were broadly the same as the previous year?
No.
Haven't you got that data?
No.
Why not?
No.
It's part of a formal course. Wouldn't they have had some assessment in there?
For the entrepreneurship course, they didn't have that type of assessment. It was more that if they were not successful, they didn't go to the next stage where they got funding.
Well, if you store data, there must be some assessment data of some sort which says how well do the students do on this course.
Does the convener or the teacher, did they have a subjective opinion that I felt it made them learn better?
Let me take them separately. In the Chinese learning course, there is in the narrative there is references to how they felt it impacted their study the students. Yes, so that is I do report
but
on
we
that.
We need some more objective.
Something more objective than as there wasn't that level of
I'm surprised, given that it's in a formal learning scenario.
It was the implementation was more for a formative assessment, formative, rather than
something that I think it would strengthen the results as all. If you could, at the moment, I'm left with a niggling doubt. Well,
I think again the issue is that not an issue, but it's conflated by the fact that you're in the picture. Right? So this is not just their practice.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just the teacher who said, "I'm going to implement this mobile learning system," and you're studying it at a distance.
Yeah.
You're in them you're in there, kind of helping them set up the system. So you're changing the form of the teaching.
Yeah.
But then, exactly. You at least need to be able to say it was fit for purpose as a learning.
Yes. Some assessment of it.
And that could be an interview with the teacher, asking the teacher, not students, because students, they don't know whether they learned or not. But for the teacher to say, I felt this engaged them more, I felt this enhanced learning objectives or whatever, I think is...
It needs to be fit for purpose, that's the word, I think.
Okay. Was one of the things, what I was thinking at the time was, because it was not an evaluation of the teaching practice per se, my main interest was not around their practice as teaching.
But you're asking us to believe that this is a representative of mobile learning exercise. And either that needs to be strongly related to the literature to say this is a re-implementation of a technique that somebody else has used, which is sending these text messages. Right, that's fine. Or you need to say, this is something new that I've made up, but we have this external evidence.
And they could show that it was a...
And one of the things in the background of doing this as well was that it needed to be something that was relatively low stakes, so that there was no impact.
I understand that.
On
but just be an interview with the teacher, as you say. Some statement which gives us some reassurance that the task was meaningful.
Yeah, because unfortunately, with the best will in the world, students don't know what's good for them. Even if they're mature students. Right? And
in the lecturers, when I interview the lecturers, they do speak to that, to some extent in terms of how, in their use of the tool and their experience with the students and
Okay, page 144. That's a little bit nitpicking, I suppose, but I think looking at the questions and the options they had, it just seemed to me they're quite leading in terms of the answers they had available to them. And I just wonder why you didn't consider a more sort of neutral approach to questionnaires, such as a Likert scale or something, to give some sort of scale result. So rather than here, you're kind of putting words in their own mind into the options you're giving them.
Question 2, only one of them is negative out.
They're very leading. I would say I'm quite dubious, really, because of that.
I suppose for each of those options, though, they did use a scale, so they could still indicate if they felt that they didn't agree at all. That
it's not. I should say it's 4 to 1. It's.
But so this is you have to remind me. So this questionnaire is a quantitative survey. Yeah. So each of the I saw it there. So it is a Likert scale.
But it's kind of quantitative, but now it's kind of qualitative in terms of the statements you're giving them. It would be purely quantitative if you gave them a 1 to 5 scale. But because you're giving them qualitative statements, it becomes really this kind of mixed mode, which is not really very scientific, I think.
Yeah, and I think that problem is kind of exacerbated with the presentation of the results, which is again overly statistical or gives them.
I did, after hindsight is great. When I did that, to get to this point where I had those, I went backwards and did that, which is how I got to the graphs to convert it to that.
What I mean by overly statistical is that you have a sample size of 10, and then you're giving it as a result in percentages, and so 10% says something different than one student.
Yeah, I suppose it was being economical in the sense that to say 10% is shorter than saying 1 out of 10 or something along those lines.
I mean, I think the interviews are more successful because they're actually unpicking. You can't really do quants on a sample size.
No,
that's
it's
small.
Too
Yes.
small. I know it's too small.
That's small. So I guess the question is, what are you really learning from the fact that like 7 of them had iPhones?
I see what you mean in the numbers that they're so small but I still wanted to be able to capture so that when I was talking to them, I still got an indication of the numbers.
Maybe a reframing of this is you've got some interesting demographic information, right, which is the questionnaire, right, and actually the real meat of the data is the interview, because that unpacks the values of it.
Yeah, I think you got to. Maybe it's your only way out. The small sample size and everything, you've got to be very careful. And I think your analysis, is of the results. You can't be too strong about the analysis, really.
Yeah. So I suspect that like a thematic analysis of the interview is much more useful than.
And I do have that.
But largely the kind of the graphs and the statistical data on the results is almost overemphasized.
Yeah.
I think because you could say, well, maybe is this most interesting to give a framing to the study?
Yeah.
Is to say, I implemented the system. I got 10 people to do it. Half of them had iPhones. One of them wasn't really interested. 8 of them felt this. Right. Now here's my real data.
Yeah.
Again, it's about emphasising what should be emphasised, but not overemphasising stuff that you can't really take it.
So, page 164 is where you summarise really your findings. I think you need to be careful about language. At the moment it tells you you're making strong statements about.
Sorry, what?
Page 164. And really, these are just really, all you can do is their observations from a small sample size.
Yeah.
And comment on the observations. And then really the key is how you build on this for the next phase. And we had a similar discussion in the last chapter. What do we know now that we didn't know before? And how does that help us in this process, this methodology we're going through?
Kind of what you begin to do is then you go on to talking to the 2 staff, right?
Yeah.
So you interview the 2 staff, and that's where it starts to hint at what you should analyse in the next section, because they're talking about organisational structure.
Yeah, that's
right.
So that's not jumping out at you.
But again, it's the story of this.
Yeah.
which is the kind of it's like the data and analysis is all kind of constantly interwoven throughout.
Yeah.
That we never really build up to a real conclusion.
Well, and then really the key is then page 175. I don't know how you get that, your framework.
Yeah.
How that arrives out of all of that analysis is complete mystery to me. And I don't really understand what the things like the arrows mean in this diagram. So community end users, you get arrows pointing at organisation system. What does that mean? What are those arrows?
The arrows there are just an indication that that is the group of users involved in the activities underneath, and so they could come from any of those. But the framework at this stage arrives. I'm trying to think.
No, it's funny. You call it a framework, but we've gone past that.
Okay.
Don't try and think of something else.
Okay. The framework at this point, and as I went, was a response to what the issues and the challenges that were arising, as we went through the analysis. As I went through the analysis, so this framework is a response to that.
I mean, my issue with it is that I read the kind of the things that people are saying, but they're not saying it in the language that you use in the framework.
Okay.
They're talking about organisational processes. They're not talking about onboarding of devices. I think that's later in the framework. They're not talking about change agents and gatekeepers. That's
my interpretation of it from applying the DOI theory model.
Yeah.
There.
But again, it's that explicit notion of there's a discussion here that's kind of missing.
Okay.
That unpacks your reasoning.
I'm
explicitly using the rhetoric of organisational systems to describe the data that I've just shown you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't understand what this diagram is showing me. I don't really understand what these arrows mean. I don't understand how this blue box on the side, what that means. There's no arrow between the yellow middle one and then the right hand or middle part of that one below. But there is to the range of users. I guess the diagram doesn't make any sense.
So maybe you could talk us through how we might use this.
Okay.
Is this a process? How do we use it?
What is it?
Okay. What this is essentially a response to the summary or the results that have come through from what the practitioners feel there should be in place for them to be able to use mobile technologies in their practice effectively, and from all of the activities that we've done up till this point.
So just to I've got that.
Okay.
They've said a bunch of stuff that they feel needs to be in place.
Yeah.
And that's what this captures.
And so this captures that with the lens of the DOI theory of diffusion, and we're looking at it and saying, okay, we want to be able to have a mass of people, or including the innovators, early adopters, that range of people. And so we have those as a community of end users, which will be people from all those areas, and then that leads then on to testing of the organizational systems, which is what we've done in.
Okay, so that's like, I go to my institution, I identify an innovator. I mean, so how would I use this in practice? What would I do?
And one of the first things you would do is, first of all, find people who are interested in this work, which is pretty much what we did at the beginning.
So I'm in this top box.
Yeah, you're in the top box. So you find people, who are going to be using technologies, or who are interested in using technologies, or who are doing some fringe projects on the side, or and you also you want people from ideally the whole range of users there, and then from there, with working with them in the way that we've done in the first cycle and second cycle, you start to test the organizational systems and processes to identify where opportunities are.
Okay,
and
so I'll stop you there.
Okay.
This diagram doesn't say that. This diagram says nothing about testing anything.
That's what the organizational systems and processes is.
Okay.
It's not clear at all.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I think these are kind of quite rhetorical questions.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you look at this and think, is this a process flow?
Yeah.
Right? Is this a task I need to do, and then I need to do this, and then I need to do this?
No.
Right?
Okay.
I've no idea what onboarding of user-owned devices means.
Okay.
It's a very specific, it's very jargon heavy. I think this is the first time we've seen this phrase.
Yeah.
Which?
Onboarding of user-owned devices.
Okay.
Yeah. It's,
That's I'm just using that to refer to how people get their devices
what we-
active within the system.
I can guess what I think it
Yeah.
means. But
but there's this level of I don't really understand. There's text. We're not sure where it's come from. But then there's also we're not sure what the relationship is between the boxes. Is it a process? Is it? Or what is
It's
it?
their categories of
dependencies?
activities. There are activities that are happening towards with the purpose of all building together to create this mobile-enabled environment of
I
mobile
think at a
capacity.
more functional level of the diagram, so literally, not what you're trying to say, but this diagram is supposed to kind of be conveying some information. It's whether the blue box on the right are annotations, or whether that's a different
Okay.
path through the system, or
Clear at all.
is it a list of instructions? Right, so
Okay.
it's
It is, just an expression of what needs to be done, not necessarily a flow chart or a process flow in that sense.
To me, it sounds like you just got distinct things, blocks, and I can't see a relationship between them. Maybe they don't need to be related. Maybe they're just different issues. I don't understand the flows here. And what's the link between organisational systems and processes, and then the drivers, the blue?
The drivers are in the middle because that's I know earlier on you said, the
Yeah.
LTSE as drivers might not, LTSE are not the only drivers for using mobile learning, but that middle group, the reason I have it in the middle
That's
is
a
because
group,
it's
is it? Right.
it's a core group of change agents or gatekeepers. So these would be the people
So
who,
people, right?
yeah,
Okay.
they're people, yes. So, in this case, the LTSC, and then people who work directly with the LTSC that could be evangelists for using mobile technologies or mobile learning in their own practice areas.
I mean, so it's also very removed from the chapter 4
Yeah.
kind of framework.
Mhm.
And if you're trying to sell it as kind of the next iteration,
Yeah.
I mean, my problem is that it's come out of nowhere,
So
and
in
it's the rhetoric of this is very removed from everything you're saying in the chapter.
in page 139, I have the chapter 4 framework, and I've mapped onto that the different.
Yeah. No,
So if
yeah.
you compare,
No, I know this, but everything we've just seen
Mhm.
has been you've been talking to a bunch of people,
yeah,
right, about whether they've got iPhones or not.
yeah,
And that's talking a specific language, and then suddenly we're into onboarding of devices and change agents, and
Mhm.
it's a complete change of tone. It's very abrupt,
okay,
and that, I think this is what's
Can't see the linkage
what's
between the two, really.
confusing.
okay,
And again, in the same way that we talked about at the end of chapter 4, the characterisation of it as a framework is too soon.
okay.
Again, like, it's too soon. Actually, what are your takeaways from chapter 5? What have we learnt from your data in chapter 5?
That's what we really need.
That's what we want to know.
Okay.
What have you learnt? That's about somebody saying, no, my boss doesn't want to put money into the Wi-Fi,
Okay.
right? Because that's the meat of actually what you learn.
Yeah.
This is just a distraction from actually the findings.
And it
At
doesn't
this
make any
stage.
sense either. I just don't understand the relationship between these boxes. What I'm supposed to get from these links.
Maybe we can park the framework.
Yeah, come back to it. 'Cause I know it's
Come back
repeated
to
at the end of.
Because the final framework coming, I think it's useful to discuss
Yeah.
that.
Let's come back to it. I think that's a good point. That's chapter 5. Oh, we go. Yeah. Chapter 6. Okay. I use baseline again first. Second sentence.
I mean,
Yeah.
to kind of sum up, again, starting this, for me, there are a lot of kind of methodological questions. You say, the framework has been operationalised in chapter 5. No, it hasn't. What's that mean? I can't remember what page that was. Yeah, page 179. In chapter 2, no, cycle 2, bracket chapter 5, the framework is operationalised.
Yeah, I don't know what that
Use
means.
as a basis.
Yeah.
No, it hasn't.
No. It was an outcome.
Yeah, it was an outcome of chapter 5. Again, this is one of these linguistic things,
Yeah.
right? It's not implemented, it's not operationalised.
Yeah.
I suppose what I mean there is that it's made practical, but so operationalized may not be the best word to use.
That's important because that's the. What are you trying to say? What happened with the framework in chapter 5?
In chapter 5, what we had as an outcome in chapter 5, that the framework which we had got in the previous cycle 1, which was basically a categorization of people without saying what they were doing, now became you now knew what you needed to do.
So you mean from an operational, you've taken an operational perspective to
Yeah.
the framework.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And
That's a very different thing to say.
So if I just quickly make a comment about the on 175, and so referring back to the original framework, not called framework anymore, but what this has is expand on the different categories we had there. So we had the people, we had the systems and processes, and then
System processes, right.
Sorry.
Yes, I remember. Yeah. That's the people. The top yellow one.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
The systems, isn't it? Is that systems? I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Here we are. Yeah.
So we had people, processes, and then the
environment.
The environment, yes. So that is what we now have in the framework, which is expanded, and that's what I meant by operationalized. That there's specific.
So how do staff? Are these both? You just got staff at the top then.
Yeah. So those are the users, the staff.
Well, what happens to students then?
The students are the audience, if you like. They are not the ones, so they get the results of
this. Are they
this.
end users then?
They're end users, yeah.
So I don't know why they're not included.
So the point
Because they have no action to get to that point. So this is being done to,
Yeah, I mean, so I think the point I'm getting at is the inconsistency between identifying students as stakeholders and then suddenly they're not
stakeholders.
They're not even users.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
Okay.
And the processes part, is that been expanded? I don't see how that's been expanded.
The process is interwoven through most of what we do underneath, which is why it's organizational systems and processes. There's stuff on, that's, I suppose I don't know if I can call this an arc. So from the column on your right.
The blue one.
Yes, the blue one into the bottom bits there, the range of identifying opportunities, and then also the bits in aligning with the strategic goals and objectives.
So I think it's we've got sucked back into chapter 5.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're identifying ongoing problems with our understanding of the presentation framework. I think we can probably say there are some. It's important to instead think about what are the clear outcomes of chapter 5.
Yeah.
The distinct contributions made in chapter 5. So that are the themes emergent explicitly from the interview.
Yeah.
Right?
Can't we just own this now, can we?
And then I think let's do the same thing with chapter 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think maybe let's sidestep the framework for now.
Yeah.
That's the bigger picture.
You can't.
Okay.
And let's say, what's the contribution of chapter 6?
Okay.
And then in the round, what does that say to the framework?
Okay, so where are we at? Back to chapter 6. 180 I've got. I mean, the what was it, third paragraph. So far, the research has engaged with a limited range of participants representing stakeholders, early adopters, innovators, and change agents. I didn't see that mentioned before. Did you mention that before?
Sorry, what line is that?
So far, the research has engaged.
with a limited range of
Yeah.
participants. Yeah.
Here you say it's innovators, overlooks and change agents. Was that explained earlier? I didn't see it. Is that the first time? I think it was the first time
No, I have, yes, I think I've not identified, I did identify the innovators
It
and
wasn't
early
clear.
adopters.
It's not clear
Yeah.
at all. You made that statement. I thought, whoa. You know, that's
When I
lovely.
talk about how I recruit participants give me 1 second, let me find that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing
In recruitment
yeah,
of participants
but
for cycle 2.
I think the point that's being made is that we learnt about innovators and early adopters in chapter 5 because that's where we introduced Rogers.
Yes, that's all. Yeah.
Okay.
And even though you might mention them, right, but now you're basically using terminology that you only properly introduced in chapter 5 and saying, oh, that stuff you learnt in chapter 4, that was using this thing you learnt in chapter 5, but I'm only just telling you that in chapter 6.
Okay, and can I just get you to have a quick look at page 134 or from 133 down?
Which is chapter what?
That's chapter 5.
Yeah.
The sampling there,
Yeah, but I think that's so then I'm like, but you didn't identify the people in chapter 4 as doctors, an innovator, an early adopter.
Okay.
It's not. Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
clear. The whole thing is.
So that's about moving that model to
Yeah.
Yeah. So then it's let's put all the stuff that's the same in the same place. All of my literature, my concepts, chapter 2, and then I can refer back to this common system.
Okay. 181.
Sorry, 1 second.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. The 6.1, end of first paragraph. You say end users were not being, prospective end users not being evident in the analysis. Do you mean students? Or what's the, I didn't understand that statement. Last sentence of the first paragraph, 6.1.
Yeah, and no, not just the students in general. The wider body of users.
What do you mean by that? Sorry.
So we've worked with smaller groups of stakeholders. So what I'm talking
some of them were end users.
Yes, some of them were. Yes. Some of they all were. I mean, we had students in that, but what I meant there is not the broader population.
Well, no, you've had a sample of end users.
Yeah.
So they have a sample of end users has been. I mean, that needs to be changed. Yeah. Okay. Okay, page 182. You did a phone survey, and then there was a online survey.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear to me. I went from the following parts. Which parts were asked on the phone, and which parts were done by the online survey?
The phone survey wasn't covered in this at all.
It wasn't.
It wasn't because it wasn't part of my work at all.
So I raised that as a question.
Yeah.
Who designed this? So is this explicitly something you're doing?
Yes. So this is something I did. The phone survey was not.
Right. So okay, can you just clarify that?
Okay.
I mean, the fact that it's a body of data that you have access to.
Yeah.
That you're using.
It was more a recruitment mechanism.
Yeah, but you didn't have any influence. You know, my question is, did you have any influence over the kinds of questions that were asked?
For this one, yes, I did. This was my survey.
Not the phone survey.
The phone survey.
No, not the phone
You
survey.
weren't
No.
involved in the design of the phone survey at all.
I was not as part of this work. Yes.
It was only the follow-up survey.
Yeah. Yes.
But I mean, I think the follow-up survey is the most successful, I think, because you've got a sizable response rate. So I think of the 3 chapters, this felt like the one that had the most data in it.
Yes. Another definition of mobile learning, page 184, which is the one you used in the survey. We've had 4.
Yeah, we've seen this one already.
Yeah, that's repeating the one I used before.
Right.
And the reason I used that was because I wanted them to understand that the emphasis was on, the devices, the technologies.
I mean, here there's a couple of issues with data in that you've got the same quote attributed to two different people.
Which was
Page 185. More one-to-one to discuss possible use of technology not currently used, LS96. Page 186, same quote, LS98.
okay.
I thought, really? Is that the same quote used twice, or is it the same person, or something else? It's surprising.
I think I might have. I might have coded it in under, yeah.
It's probably a typo there.
My next one's on to page 202. So,
yeah, because there was the same quote used twice in a different categorisation. The repeat of one of the quotes. Issue 202, no, 201. It took me a while to make sense of the table.
yeah, he's heading, yeah.
The why, yes,
Why,
no.
yeah. I know it's in the text, but it's,
Yeah.
I had a similar problem. But 202, I don't know if this was me, it may just be me, but the second paragraph, elements of the framework proposed in section 5.61 are used to respond to the barriers that have been highlighted by the survey. The framework provides a mechanism, I didn't really understand where that happened. So,
Yeah, I completely agree. That's you discussing the framework when it's, it's not being used.
it's not being used in any way.
It's,
I'd like to see, but I don't think I missed it. But
I think this goes back to what I was saying. When you asked me earlier, where I was saying that the framework and the elements or the constituents of the framework are a response to what the input was when I interrogated the lecturers and observed the systems and talked to the
I think you could
practitioners
say the
following
feedback
that.
from the studies in the cycle was used, but I can't see how the framework was used.
yeah, this isn't.
No, the framework
But the problem is I don't really understand the framework, so that doesn't help.
But also, if the point is that you're claiming some verification of the framework here, you need to have set out to have done that in the first place.
No, I think this is, maybe I haven't phrased this right. I'm not saying that I have done this. I'm saying that it is a response, that the framework is a response to the barriers that have been highlighted by the survey rather than that work has been done, because the framework hasn't been deployed.
Version, section 5.6.1. Framework proposed in section 5, that's the previous version.
Yeah, it's a response to the barriers, but not that it's been deployed to actually do, or maybe I'm not understanding.
I'm not sure why it's mentioned here then, because this is an outcome from the previous chapter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think again this is an instance of where we're kind of combining data, results, analysis, and also the kind of looking back at the framework and also speaking forward. It's like you want to take all of these little bits and put them together at the end, because that's actually you reflecting on the framework. This doesn't tell us how the framework will be iterated again.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're explicitly not verifying the framework previously.
Yeah.
So it's just a bit that,
hold
on, we've gone straight from data again into big claims about the framework.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. 204. It wasn't clear to me. This was the interview of the workshop. Whether leadership stakeholders were involved in the workship, as you claim.
No, they were not in the workshop.
I thought the whole purpose of this phase, senior leadership management, is about engaging with senior leadership and management. But
yeah, I interviewed them.
But they weren't involved in the workshop though?
No, the workshop was with academic staff, a group of academic staff, not the leadership.
So it's hard to see how it fits into the purpose of this cycle. I thought the whole point of this cycle was to explore the leadership. It's to explore the leadership, but also still to continue the exploration of the wider institute, wider academic view. I don't know, it was a clear separation for me.
It feels like a chapter 5 thing.
Chapter
So
5, yeah.
So talking to your academics is all about capacity,
Yeah.
right? The day-to-day vocational capacity of your
Yeah.
academics to do this. Chapter 6 is you're talking to senior management and
I-
that big infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm still talking to academics though in getting more data, because what I had earlier on, you mentioned earlier, was there were smaller, smaller, where the interviews were a smaller group, and then we had the questionnaires, which was a large, large enough input of data.
We should put in
And,
chapter 5 then,
Sorry,
because it really belongs in chapter 5.
which this.
Because it's not involving leadership people, it's part of that, part of the methodology.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think that the trouble
it's what
In time terms, you might have done it at the same time, but in terms of the issues,
the issues being explored
Yeah.
were, at this point had derived from
I mean,
what
so-
was
so the-
period. Yeah.
what you're hinting at is that the trap you've fallen into, the really easy trap to fall into is to present this as a kind of narrative description.
Mm.
And the chapter 5 framework looked like this, so
Yeah.
I've got some more data.
Mhm.
Now let's look at this more data rather than the kind of chapter 5 tells a chapter of the story about, which is about the day-to-day use of mobile learning by academics and the barriers to that. Chapter 6,
because that was your cycle. You said initially your cycle
Yeah.
3 was about strategic leadership.
Yeah.
So it doesn't fit.
the I can't even say that word
Yeah.
now.
Like what I'm trying to do in cycle 3 is take what I found out in the others and apply it to a broader context, and also as well as having a broader input from the academic space, also or from the academic practitioners, also have the leadership input on that, and then
Okay, I mean, I think this comes from clarity of the research question as well.
Yeah.
Is that the research questions do set you up to say this is about capacity and leadership, and this is all about academics. And then we've sort of got a bit of it in here and a bit of it in here, and it because we're looking at the thing with multiple perspectives all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I think that is it, and maybe it is multiple perspectives of in each of the circles of the same thing. And so I mean, like in this cycle 3, I still have the student's perspective there, but it's a wider student's perspective, just like it's a wider academic staff perspective. And then I look at the leadership perspective against those three.
Survey, don't you?
Yeah, so it's I use
that
the
would
word.
be true, but I had a question about that because it wasn't clear to me what the objective of the student survey was. Most of it seemed to be just gathering information about what students currently have, rather than probing on their needs, which would be a more strategic study. So it just doesn't glue together in terms of this is all about strategic decision making.
Yeah.
Understanding.
I think from this, the reason for that was really, because from the literature review, I had established that the students tended to look to the lecturers for what they did. So what we wanted to know from the students was what they were currently doing. We had got input at this point from the smaller groups of students, and
Does the result of the student survey challenge, or is it at odds with the response of senior management? Because if we reframe your entire agenda as a rethinking of bring your own device for a modern university,
yeah,
senior management all about, I need a strategy and culture and infrastructure and whatever. And the students are like, we're all using Facebook all the time on our mobile devices, but we're worried about bills.
yeah.
Are they speaking the same agenda? Or should you actually say, hey, senior management says this, but they're all wrong because my student data says this?
There are some differences. Like senior management, feel that it's there if you want to do it, but the academics don't feel that way as comes through. And then my own observations as well, don't quite agree with senior management in that sense, in that everything is in place as it should be. And the student's perspective looks at it from where they are at this point, and their own issues.
I'm just trying to construct a significant takeaway from chapter 6, other than
It's a mishmash.
other than learning is good, and senior management said, yes, we need a strategy. Because that's the kind of quite hollow thing that senior management tends to say.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. We should be ethical. We should have a strategy about this.
Yeah.
Right. But if you could actually identify something novel from the student survey that either contradicted management's current strategy or lack of strategy, that might be.
Yeah. Okay. I think we need to move on. I think.
Yeah. I mean, the last comment about the data. The graphs are all over the place. We've got a bar chart, but 45% is the same height as 26% on basically every page. Page 224, page 225.
Yeah, I left the numbers in because I noticed
but
that.
the numbers,
But yes,
the numbers, the graphs.
the visual and.
I guess my final question on coming out of chapter 6 is, I guess, kind of responses to what management said is like practically what would operationalising the framework actually involve? Is it leadership supporting innovators?
Yeah.
Is that the thing that you need to do? Or do they need to kind of mandate a policy? Or
page 209, I didn't understand the first paragraph on the diagram. It talks about aligning your emerging framework with the TOE framework.
So
What's that mean? How did you align it, or?
So what I wanted to do here was just find a way to categorize different issues that had come up in terms of the environment.
But did you align it? I didn't see any alignment. You present the TOE and then say that statement, and then that's it. I didn't see any more.
And if you go to the, can you jump that far ahead?
Yeah.
Okay, in the actual frame where I start to expand.
The final version of the framework.
Yeah, the final version of the framework is where I start to map in the elements of what the TOE framework actually specifies.
I didn't see it. It's not obvious how that's mapped in.
But again, right, the point is that as the development of the framework has involved an explicit inclusion of the TOE framework. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I need.
Whether that should be here or not, question.
Yeah.
But we've got DOI plus TOE, and it's all leading towards the final big.
Yeah, I wanted to be sure that within the framework I had a mechanism with which I could channel out to explain the relevance of being responsive to, say, the environmental factors that would drive this.
I mean, I'll say the same thing. It's almost like you want to end chapter 6 with, we've learned that senior leadership say the environment needs to be adapted to this.
Yeah.
Right. And then chapter 7 is, right, all of my framework starts in chapter 7. Because it's just getting, all of these little kind of statements about the framework are just getting lost and confused.
Yeah. And then the final framework, again, I really struggled with it. I don't understand.
At the end of chapter 6. Yeah, I don't. The same as before.
Yeah, same as before. I don't really see how it came about from the results, and what it means as well. I don't really understand.
Well, by that point in chapter 6, what I've done is basically revisit the framework, and it hasn't changed for the most part, except for the fact that based on the insights that have now gleaned, most of which fell into the areas that we hadn't looked into before, which is around a continuous change management, and that's what the only addition at that point. When we go on to where we start to expand on what that looks like in practice, and then there's a further explanation.
Yeah, I mean, so the problem here is again the gap or the disconnection, right? So, take for example costing. So, lots of people have been worried about cost.
Yeah.
But then you've made the assumption that this needs continuous change management in the form of costing for systems and servicing. But there's no explanation as to why that's an appropriate response to worries about cost.
I suppose what I was trying to do was to, just something like what you had mentioned earlier on, was even because I didn't feel I could go into it at this point, and I have it detailed further on, I wanted to signpost it here that this is what it will look like. However, I get your point that it doesn't expand here, so you don't know what that means until you get further into chapter 7, where
I think it's step 7. Time. Yeah. Okay, let's bottom of page 247. You say it can be used as an instrument for guiding the creation of capacity. I don't understand how it can be used as an instrument, but I'm not sure we've got time really to.
Okay, so I mean, we could go through chapter 7 a bit at a time, but
I'm not sure it's really.
I don't think
we can cover really.
We can talk about the big.
I don't think we can. It's just
we can talk about the big points.
I think I'll summarise my points. I think they're probably the same. I don't see how it'd be an instrument. I don't see how the frameworks emerge through the cycles. There are some issues also about here the 7th process, and you reduce them down to 4. I didn't see how that happened. Page 249, there's 7, and then they become 4 in your tables.
Like each of the 7 is represented in the 7 are basically split into the 4.
I know, but I don't know which ones are which. Which groups of these 7 go to which ones of the 4?
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, that's probably just an explanation thing. The tables, again, obviously I don't really how they're derived at really. I struggle with that. Where the core tasks come from. Are the columns generated by the research findings? I didn't really see the linkage from the research findings from previous chapters. And so on. That's kind of
I think I'd say the same thing. I think chapter 7 is indicative, is the most representative of this problem.
Yeah.
That we've got a bunch of data. There's not a huge discussion and analysis, and then suddenly a very specific framework that you're saying can be used as an instrument. I know it references back, but the referencing back isn't doing.
I did try. I did follow these, and I just could not see
because we have some very interesting educational findings and insights. Desperate to get out, and then suddenly, the rhetoric of organisational management and process-oriented business, right? That's and nothing. We can't see the stuff in the middle.
No, that's right. Yeah, I think that's a summary. Really.
It's a summary, and it's kind of the main chapters kind of suffer from that, and then chapter 7 is kind of it's much more of the same.
Yeah.
No discussion. Suddenly, bang! Here's an instrument, and that's a very specific characterization.
So what I tried to do in 7.1 there, the 7 you talked about earlier on, was capture the 7 things, the key things that came across, and the areas that needs to be addressed.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, we tried to do it, but it isn't coming across. So I guess there's some specific questions we could ask about this, which is, I think, not what you're trying to do, but more what you understand by this. This thing. I think. I guess there's questions about if it's an instrument, who should use this, and what faith should they have in using this? And this is a question of generalisability again. What are the implications of this there's no evaluation here. Is that a problem? Right. Some of those, maybe we could just finish with touching on some of those.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just the mappings just aren't there. I mean, I can't see how we got from that table on end of chapter 6 to then this synthesis of issues. Perhaps you could probably map those to the 4, but then I don't really see the mappings here. So it's just a mapping issue.
It is split into the different ones, and I've explained, in this first part, responding to this, the
Okay, I'm going to stop you there.
Okay.
You're saying what you believe you've done in the thesis, and we're saying we can't see it.
Okay.
So a better answer to the question would be what the mapping is,
Okay.
not that the mapping is here.
That's what we can't see, the mapping.
Right. What is the mapping?
Gotcha.
Right. And so I suppose I'll ask you the question: why is this an instrument? Who should use this? Who's it for?
Can I? So in the instrument, I call it an instrument because this is what the organizational leadership or the information technology department or the LTSC, anybody who is in that space where they are charged with creating or working on enabling mobile learning capacity within an organization using individually owned devices, this is what they would use to tease out what needs to be done to create that enabling environment.
So I think a big question that we both have, and moving on from that, is how do you know it's right? What are the limitations of this? You kind of propose this instrument and say, do this.
Yeah.
How do you know it works?
It's been a response to things that have come up through the research in each cycle. The framework was a response to, and this is what the problem has been. So this is, okay, this is these are the problems that have been raised. Here's a response to that, and then in the next phase, and it keeps building on from in that way. And that's why, when I looked at this part here, these are the issues summarily that were raised, and then, breaking them into 4 boxes, and just to see, how they could commonly be grouped together, and then it goes on to the.
What does the colour coding mean? What does this yellow box as opposed to a white box?
The colours didn't have no
the
significance.
262. Which is the last, that one.
It was just the color coding is just used for where the heading is, and then where the explanation of what's there is.
I think, just to carry on with that last point, I think it's really critical to your methodology, is the framework is derived from talking to a bunch of people about what they think is the problem.
Yeah.
And then you're proposing that they do something.
Yeah.
But there's not much evidence that them doing the things will result in. Yeah, how can you claim that them doing the things will fix the problems?
At this point, what I proposed I would do is to set propose a framework that could address the issues that come up, evaluating that framework,
So a suggestion, again, is about the framing of the framework, is that actually this is a framework for understanding the problems, not for fixing them.
Okay.
None of this speaks to fixes or evidences that your fixes will work. I mean, the whole of chapter 7 is a business proposal that's not grounded in any of the rest of it. But actually, you've identified potentially some quite interesting challenges about BYOD in the modern age.
Yes.
Right? And then actually, there's implications for that.
Yeah.
Management needs to have a policy, is an implication. And that's very different from management must implement a strategy, right? There's a different tone here. I think what Michael and I are saying is there's not enough to support such a prescriptive framework here that says do this. You don't know that that's the right thing to do, but you can say. Students feel that ethics are problematic. Students feel that cost is a concern. Management should probably spend some time. It's much more. and this is a better use of the word holistic. It's more of a holistic response to some issues.
And I'm looking at the contribution to knowledge as well. I don't really understand your claims about contribution to theory. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, from the literature review and in the other research that I mentioned that I had seen there, there was that gap in terms of a framework that did what I explained earlier on in terms of addressing creation of mobile learning capacity, or rather
What
creating
theory
the
does this build
environment.
on? Theory needs to build on theory usually. Does it build on previous theory?
It builds on previous research done by the other researchers, so the likes of the Al-Rashidis and the ones I mentioned earlier.
Did they have theories?
No, they were not theories. They had a model.
So again, this is about the characterization of your work, right?
Okay.
If you say, I've contributed a theory,
Okay.
that explicitly says, well, I've built on Einstein's theory of relativity and made Claudius' theory of relativity. Right? So are you saying this is a new theory of mobile learning capacity?
I looked at theory as more the text in the space and the existing literature in the space than
Yeah,
a
it's not
theory
really
like
theory, I would say.
relativity
So
and
you've made it. So again, it's about correctly stating the significance of this.
Mhm.
Is this it's not theory is difficult. It's a contribution to the field of mobile learning.
yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps the
Okay.
higher education field.
I suppose it's more a contribution to the knowledge about mobile learning than in,
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
different. That's different. Yeah.
theory like
Yeah.
relativity and
And
that.
so generally with this kind of these last portions of the thesis, instead of trying to claim that you're going to make some groundbreaking theory, you want to talk about the potential impact of your work.
Gotcha.
Who's going to use this? How's it going to change the world? Right? And you need to think really speculatively. Right? What would happen if every HE organisation in Ireland started doing this right now?
Yeah.
Would it save millions of pounds?
What's
Students
the
will learn
impact?
more. Right? That's much more, and you can actually speak to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't
Intangible,
and similarly, you can't say that you speak to, you make a contribution to kind of design research process. I think at some point you say, I've used this, and therefore.
Yeah, you did say used,
And you can't, you're massively overstating the contribution.
Yeah, what I meant there again is goes by it's the contribution to the research done
but
in
again,
that space.
It's about clear language and say other people doing similar stuff
Okay.
might find it useful to follow my methodology.
Yeah.
And that's very different from contributing to methodology because you never reflect on the validity of your methodology.
Okay.
And I think my final statements are going to be, we've talked about it before, generalisability.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Australian study at the end, so it might be possible to be more specific about generalising there. We talked earlier about characterising institutions and cultures, so I think that's something you could possibly do. And the other issue is not looking to the future, I think we've talked about already. Again, I think that's another issue you would need to look at.
I find it tough. Where was the Australian?
It's at the
that's 7.4. I think.
267.
267. I think that reminded me because it was almost like
On that generalizability of findings.
Yeah, I know. Oh my God, it's right at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, and that should be here. It's the massive takeaway of like the impact of my work. Is huge.
Yeah.
Not that lots of other people do something remarkably similar. I didn't mention it in the literature review.
Yeah, it was weird at the end there. Yeah.
Here, it's almost like you need a discussion chapter. A chapter that really talks about what the framework is and what it means.
Yeah.
And then the conclusion is really just that I'm going to blow my own trumpet a lot. And make myself sound really good.
Okay. So if I do that, I'm sorry, could you say that again?
No, because I think what we want to do is discuss about what we think we actually should do.
Okay.
We'll formally let you know. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's as
We got through it, I think. Yeah.
I think that's about as done.
Yeah.